Go.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of the Ethan Lemler podcast show, ELPS for short. I'm your host, Ethan, and today we have with us George,
Hey.
Rishi,
What's up?
Ryan. All right, welcome back to him. Mark.
Hey.
And newcomer Luke. It's their internet. All right, whatever. A little bit of technical difficulties. Just bear with this here. A little bit of a new thing for us. All right, today for the second episode. Yesterday, talked about round 1. Today, we're just going to talk about the entire draft and our draft grades from the ELPS crew. We all put our own draft grades for each team, and we averaged them out, and we're going to discuss them here today. All right, let's go to the first team.
AFC
The
East.
New England Patriots. NFC East, New England Patriots. We had a total score C-, pretty even there. It's only thing coming there is Rishi's D. Wasn't a great draft for them. With their most notable, they didn't have a first rounder, 2 second-rounders in a safety, Kyle Duggar from Lenoir-Rhyne. That was the first D2 or D3 player taken in this draft. And then Josh Uche, linebacker out of Michigan. After that, they had a couple tight ends, some defense, and some line work there. Anybody want to comment on their draft?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
sure.
the lack of a first-round pick definitely hurts them.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to see throughout our grades and the trends. I think every team that didn't have a first-round pick will definitely have a lower grade. So you're going to have to take that with a grain of salt, depending on what they got.
I don't know who the Patriots quarterback's going to be. I don't know if Stidham can get the job done in New England. I think
there are
the rebuild.
A few things wrong with this draft for me. Most of it was because of the needs that they had. They needed an edge rusher. They needed new cornerbacks. They already had their safety, and they also needed a tight end, not to mention a quarterback who they think will do. They think Stidham will do the job. Except they took 2 linebackers in the second and third with their second and third picks and a kicker in the 5th round, which was just way too early for me and not addressing the needs, which I think the draft is for.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to the next team now. Right. Next team, we have
New York Jets.
New York Jets. All right. So, surprisingly, okay draft from their organization. You know, they're not the greatest. So, while I'm trying to find them, how'd you guys think of their draft?
I
What did you
mean,
think of it?
for me, C is average. So I think the Jets had an average draft. Obviously, instead of drafting Mekhi Becton with the 11th pick, I think they should have gone receiver here with Judy, Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb. I think that would have helped Sam Darnold a little bit more. But actually, I think like their draft not like too much of a C, but like a B minus, because they did get Denzel Mims, a pretty good wide receiver from Baylor.
I thought Denzel Mims would have been the 5th wide receiver off the board. I really like the Mekhi Becton pick. I think they should have went Becton there on the O-line instead of, like you said, a receiver. Because right now they have Darnold, great quarterback, but has always had offensive line troubles. So this is a year that he's going to prove himself with a new offensive line. I think they can get the best out of Darnold.
Yeah, but then again, the Jets lost Robbie Anderson to the Panthers. They don't have that true number 1 wide receiver in New York. So I think they should have try to get what you think to be your franchise quarterback, a pretty good wide receiver.
Yeah, I thought they had a pretty effective draft. Going after all of their needs on the O-line, they got a nice wide receiver in Mims, and they got a lot of defensive help there too. And one of the more important picks that might pan out in the next couple of years, James Morgan, quarterback out of Florida International. he has a lot of upside. Didn't go against the greatest competition, but if he's able to pan out, they could have their franchise quarterback after Derek Carr, which would make this an A draft no matter what. All right.
The thing was that Jake Fromm was still on the board at that time. This is what lowered the grade down from an A to a B because of the James Morgan pick. They already have Darnold and and Jake Fromm was still on the board, which makes me wonder why they took Morgan.
Yeah, slight correction to what I said. I meant Darnold instead of Carr, obviously. All right. Next pick. Next team we have the Buffalo Bills. Give me 1 second. Buffalo Bills, we graded pretty right down the line of B. My thoughts, like I said, effective. Going for Epineza was a pretty great pick there. Defensive end at number 22, which really was a great value pick. They got a good running back in Zach Moss, and Jake Fromm, as George said, a good backup quarterback for Josh Allen, what they have now. And, pretty effective. It could have gone a little bit heavier in the defense just to solidify, but other than that, it was nothing splashy, nothing, no great moves, but it was an effective draft for them overall.
I mean, obviously they didn't have a first round pick this year because they traded for Stephon Diggs. So
right.
So it was. I think the Buffalo Bills did it. Their front staff, they did a pretty good job with the Diggs trade. Just give Allen more weapons, and they had a solid draft.
All right.
What made this a B and not an A for me was the kicker based on number 188 overall. I feel like Fromm was a good investment for the future, but they should have addressed corner before their 7th round pick in Dane Jackson because they have a hole after Tre'Davious White.
Yeah, I agree. Kicker in the 6th round is probably a reach.
Might be, but kicker's really important in today's NFL, and there's a lot of turnover. So we'll see what happens with them in the future. All right, Ryan. Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins.
A+ from us. Extreme. They had 3 first rounds, so it would have been really bad if they didn't get an A+. But overall, front office, Flores. I'm not sure who the GM is, but that team is really one of my favorites right now in the NFL. They're young and they're effective in getting new talent, especially after only 1 year of a tank. I think they're going to be able to make a run. Maybe not this year, but next year and the years after that. They have an effective core, especially if Tua can pan out. They have a great core that they can start building out, and I think it'll really pan out for them in the future.
Deal of the draft for me, defensive tackle Raekwon Davis on day 2. I really like that pick. I feel like he could have went day 1.
I believe a really good pick that's underrated for the Dolphins is Malcolm Perry in the 7th round, 32nd pick in the 7th round. He was like a quarterback / wide receiver / running back at Navy in their offense, and he could become like a Taysom Hill type in the NFL.
Yeah, we'll see what Flores can do with that. That's a dynamic player right there. They got right. Moving to another division, we got AFC North, Cincinnati Bengals. Coming off, they had the 1st overall, and no surprise, they took Burrow. Their draft was basically focused on Burrow, protecting Burrow, and giving him help to block. And they got some help on defense after their terrible season last year.
Yeah, I like the Logan Wilson pick, the 3rd round linebacker out of Wyoming. I mean, obviously, the Bengals linebackers were embarrassed by that Lamar Jackson highlight. So they need to solidify there. And I think Logan Wilson, he's a pretty underrated player. I'm surprised he fell that far.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
how can you
Bengals
go wrong
did well.
with your first two picks being Joe Burrow and T. Higgins?
Yeah, it's going to be a really effective right there. That'll be scorching the NFL for the next 5 years or 4 years or whatever happens after that. Okay,
Yeah, getting the first pick in every round definitely helped.
that's true. Yeah, they didn't trade away any picks.
They didn't gain any picks either.
That's true too. All right, Ravens. All right, Mark. Obviously, I'm a homer here. What did we have? Why did we give the Ravens a B?
Yeah, well, they did acknowledge a lot of key points. It's just I feel like there were a couple areas where they could have done better.
What areas?
Like, I don't know, just overall looking through all their picks, like they did well, but I feel like they could have done better.
Obviously, you
Well,
see my grade,
the
so I'm gonna have to disagree. This was
I believe
a
did
great.
that just to avoid Ethan.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, in my very biased opinion, this is a great draft by DaCosta and company. Obviously, first pick, getting Queen, as we discussed yesterday, was a really great value. Then after that, J.K. Dobbins was a little bit of a – it was a weird pick, especially for what they have right now in their backfield. But it really solidifies what they for the next
And
couple of
now you
years, their
got three
backfield.
running backs. Now you got three running backs.
All right.
I said no to J.K. Dobbins there, and they addressed the tackle position. Marshall Yanda, who retired this offseason. I feel like instead of going J.K. Dobbins here, they could have went with a tackle or a guard instead to really shore up that O-line to give Lamar and Ingram the lanes they need.
All right. To expand on that, the reason the J.K. Dobbins pick actually does make sense, though, Gus Edwards, their backup back right now, is a free agent next year. So in order to keep it going and have some more fresh legs in, they got J.K. Dobbins who can stay behind him and maybe next year take over. Third round,
I mean, I agree with
Madubuike.
George. I think that they should have gone O-line here because J.K. Dobbins,
Yeah.
he's that type of running
agree.
back where if he doesn't have a good O-line to run behind, then he won't prosper in the NFL. So I think the Ravens should have addressed O-line with the retirement of Marshall Yanda, but J.K. Dobbins is still a good player and he can probably turn out something for the Ravens.
Yeah. What I really thought made this draft from the Ravens great was their last two picks, Proche and Stone. Proche, whatever, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. He's a great back. If you've seen his wide receiver, if you've seen a lot of his highlights, he fights for the ball, really gets in there, and he makes some spectacular catches. Stone is he's super fast, and he can really help them in their special teams plays. But these two could be the steal of the draft for me. All right, Steelers, a little bit more diversity from our picks here, but still staying around the BC range. Let's hear from Mark first for C from the Steelers.
All right. The Steelers, I believe they didn't have a first round pick, so that hurt them. And
Right.
then after that, they just still didn't get anyone spectacular. So no standouts in the draft, and yeah.
I'd have to agree with that. Luke, if your audio is working, what would you think about their draft?
I feel like they did a good job of attempting to try to protect Big Ben, who has had a history of injury in the past few years as he's getting older.
Mhm.
So that was one of their larger priorities of the draft, and they did an okay job of addressing it. That's why I held off from the A. They didn't do a perfect job. It was an okay job.
Yeah, I feel like that really sums up the draft. All right. And the last team in the North, the Cleveland Browns. So even more difference in picks here. Rishi had the A. Why'd you give them an A?
The dog pound they got
Oh,
Tackle
this is a little
to
here. Before we say anything, Rishi might be biased towards the Browns. So
they
all right,
got
keep going.
Jedrick Wills, protect Baker. They already have an explosive offense. They have Odell, Jarvis. They just signed Austin Hooper. I mean, they just needed a tackle, and they got one of the steals of the draft, Grant Delpit, safety out of LSU. I think he's a really good player. He can play a lot of positions. He's kind of like an Isaiah Simmons, but on like a different tier. He just like flies. He's a ball hawk. I think that was a really good pick by them.
All right, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Ryan and Mark at the C grade. Ryan, why'd you give the Browns a C?
I believe they did not address one of their main needs, which was corner, and that really sealed the deal for me. Like, they didn't address that cornerback position, which really tanks their grade. But they did grab Peoples-Jones in the 6th round to add to that wide receiver core.
I
Yeah, I
really
think-
like their day one and day 2 picks, but the positions they used in the last few rounds, Jacob Phillips, Harrison Bryant, and Nick Harris, I feel like those could have been used on better players. And Peoples-Jones is an electric player. That's one of my favorite picks of this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Peoples-Jones might be the steal of the draft. Okay, next division. We have the AFC South. Coming in first, the Colts, Indianapolis Colts. Staying around the AAB, overall, total, we felt pretty good about this. Giving it a solid B+. Anybody want to talk about this? All right.
Well, the Colts did not have a first-round pick, but with 2 second-round picks, they really capitalized and grabbed a wide receiver and running back to add to their offense. Jonathan Taylor is a really good running back, and they got the 4th best running back in the draft in the 2nd round. I think that's pretty good and a steal.
I think the
Jonathan
pick that
Taylor
really
is one of my favorite players.
I think the
Jonathan
pick
Taylor
that really made me give their grade an A is Jacob Eason out of Washington. I think Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, you don't really know. Like Jacoby Brissett's not in your timeline. Like he's not your long-term quarterback. So I think Jacob Eason was a good pick. Maybe he could like turn into something for the Colts.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next team, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, for 2 A's, 4 B's with a B+, surprisingly competent for this really not great Jaguars front office. So they had a pretty good pick. Cornerback, their 1st round. They really addressed their defensive need after trading away Ramsey. Cornerback, C.J. Henderson, he's an explosive player. We're just going to have to see if he pans out in the future under the Jaguars. Jaguars, they're going to be rebuilding for a couple of years. So these picks, they may or may not do something with this team. They may only do stuff in the future. But, they had to build a really solid core for their future in rebuilding, and I think they did that with their picks. And they had a pretty good amount of them, too.
Yeah, they had a dozen picks, so they were able to address all their needs.
Yeah.
The thing that made this was a B for me was, again, the later round picks. They should have stuck with their strategy of the best player available like they did in rounds 1 and 2 with Henderson, Chazon, and Laviska Shenault, who I think is a great player. He's going to kind of be like what Deebo Samuel was for the 49ers if he stays healthy. But the later round picks, they could have capitalized on some much better players. You have so many needs right now. You don't need to pick a quarterback in a later round, even if you feel like it's good value. You have other needs right now, and you can address quarterback later.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, George. I think they're all the quarterbacks
All
fell off
right.
the board.
Some whack audio coming from Rishi's part. It's all right. Let's go to the next one. All right, Houston Texans. This is where we start to get a little bit different in what we're feeling here. So we're going to start on one side of the spectrum. Rishi, one of our nicest graders here today. What do you have to say about this one?
I mean, the Texans didn't really do much. Like in this draft, they only had 5 picks. I mean, if you want to go after trades they made, obviously it's probably a good D. But I think they didn't have that much. I think Ross Blacklock, the D tackle, I think that was a pretty good pick by the Texans, but they didn't really do much in the draft after trading away some of their draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, all right, then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we got Ryan with the F grade. I think that might be our first F. What do you have to say about that?
From his description, I agree with it completely. But the way he described it, that's not a B. That's an F.
Blacklock is a great player, but the thing I didn't understand was why they took Isaiah Coulter in this really late when KJ Hill was still available. He's going to be an immediate. KJ Hill's going to be an immediate impact starter slot corner. Instead, you go with this guy, this no-name guy, especially after trading away DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, the Titans. Again, a little bit more diversity in our grades, but overall we had a C grade for the Tennessee Titans. A little bit surprising, seeing how great the organization has been in the last couple of years. But Luke, you gave them a C, which was our at mean. What do you have to say about that?
It was average, like what we had come to expect from the Titans and their style in the past few years and their style of play. All the picks made sense and fit within their team, and there wasn't anything that extremely stood out to me to make it better than a C.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ryan went a little bit lower. The D grade. That's really tough on them. Why'd you give him a D?
I believe after looking at it further, I think I was a little tough, and I actually agree with the average grade of C. I think
All right.
that was the more.
And Rishi, give them a D as well. Let's hear what he has to say. Will he changes as well? I think Rishi's having a little bit of technical difficulties. So I'll just speak then. So I give them a B, which is a little bit above average. I thought they addressed their needs fairly well. With their first-round pick, they took the tackle, which really helps their run game, which is really what all of their offense is based on. Helping Derrick Henry crush offenses and demolish their hopes and dreams. After that, they really just tried to solidify everything else. Cornerback, really getting help on their defensive secondary. Then they got Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State. He's a smaller back than Henry, but he's explosive upside, and he's like another Deion Lewis type guy. I think he's a little bit more explosive than Lewis, but he can really help out their short pass game and helping Henry with some reps as well. Then just a D tackle and then a quarterback from Hawaii, Cole McDonald. It's a little bit surprising, I don't think I don't know. I doubt he'll make the team, so I don't really like the pick. But other than that, not a lot of picks, but overall it was pretty effective. All right, Denver Broncos, A-. If it was possible, I'd give them an A+. I really like their draft. other than the Ravens, who I'm biased to, I thought they were my favorite draft. So, Mark, you gave him a B. What is that about? Really
Yeah, I think. All right. I think
dogging
you're.
on my favorite picks here. What do you have to
Sorry,
say?
Ethan.
So it's
I
okay.
thought
It's okay.
Ethan. I thought they were really really close to an A. They could have gotten there if they had just gotten like a more overall complete draft. They were really close to getting an A in my opinion, but there were just some things that they didn't do that they could have that was holding them back.
All right.
Mark, you're a Penn State fan. What do you think about KJ Hamler?
I think that was a great pick. KJ Hamler is a really explosive guy they can use in the slot. Great weapon for Drew Lock. And yeah, he's really explosive. He's going to have himself a career.
All right. Let's move on then. Chargers, B grade. It's a little bit of a weird pick from our analysts, all of us, if you will. 3 A's and 3 C's, which makes it into a B. All right, let's hear from two different sides of the spectrum again. George, you give him an A. Why?
Well, the only bad pick of this draft for them was Justin Herbert, first overall. After that, you get just great players. Kenneth Murray on the defensive side of the ball, where it was one of their biggest needs, and Ohio State KJ Hill. I think he's going to be one of the biggest steals of this draft. He goes in the 7th round, except he had a 4th round grade for me. So KJ Hill, one of the big steals of the draft, as well as Kenneth Murray. This makes it an obvious A.
So I'm gonna change my grade here from a C to a B. They didn't have many picks, so that's why I can't make it an A, because they weren't able to get all of their needs. But I agree with you. KJ Hill was a great steal, and as well as Kenneth Murray. Their middle of the draft, 4, 5, 6, was a little bit weird for me. I don't think they hit all of their needs, so it's not really an A, but it's a solid B. I'm changing it to.
I think with the picks they had, they maximized like what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to change back to a B also, because they did do a reasonable job of addressing their needs. Like, they filled the spot of Phillip Rivers, who's now on the Colts. So, and they have a good team for that young quarterback to fill in. Like, they're going to do pretty well with Herbert. And they have some good receivers for him to throw to.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on from the Chargers. Las
Ethan,
Vegas
why'd you give
Raiders.
them an F?
Weird to say. I gave them a solid F here. This is super different. Again, you see me and Mark at the opposite sides of the spectrum here. So let's hear from Mark first, then I'll give my 2 cents.
All right. I think they got a lot of weapons to help them out, especially on offense. Early on in the draft, they got some receivers, and also they looked at their needs on defense with Damon Arnett in the 1st round. So I think overall they did really well addressing what they needed to do.
All right. So I gave him an F. And just to put it blatantly, this draft sucked. It really did. First pick, they have all of the wide receivers on the board, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy. As I said yesterday, I don't want to get repetitive, but Henry Ruggs III, I don't think he's the best in the year. Then afterwards, they had okay, but they took 2 other wide receivers, and they have so many more needs on defense. Only taking cornerback and safety. They only got secondary help on defense when they needed so much more from pass rushing and linebacker help. And they got a guard in the 4th round. to help off their offensive line, but I don't think it was effective at all at addressing their needs. I just really hated this draft.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Ethan. Henry Ruggs is what they needed at number 12. They needed a vertical threat. You already have people like Tyrell Williams who are threats in the middle of the field. You need something to put the defense on edge.
Yeah, that's
a
true,
vertical
but
weapon.
the Damon Arnett pick was horrible. I mean, you're reaching for Damon Arnett when you don't know how good he's going to be.
That was their only bad pick, though. Tanner Muse, he's going to be he's going to be like Isaiah Simmons.
No, he's
Mini
not.
Isaiah.
He's not.
Yes, he will be.
No.
He's a safety linebacker hybrid who can do it all. This Tanner Muse is going to be electric.
Yeah, but did they need the safety help? They already got Arnett,
Tanner Muse will be playing linebacker for the Raiders.
If they needed linebacker, and they went
Damon
Arnett.
Yeah,
Damon
but
Arnett was not a good pick. He had a second round
Hughes is
grade
a linebacker.
late second round
he's like
grade
an
on him.
Isaiah Simmons.
Hughes is a cover linebacker. So if
He's
that's
like
what
Patrick
they need,
Queen.
but
He just needs to add a few more pounds. He's going to be a great player in the NFL.
no,
Yeah,
He's going to be
exactly.
one of
The
those
Raiders
players that are
could've gone
better
Patrick Queen, and
better
yet
in
they
the
went
NFL
Damon
than in
Arnett.
college.
I don't think so. I think they needed somebody to really get after the quarterback. They didn't have anybody last year, and they're going to suffer this year again without that.
Well, I believe it's a completely different need that they didn't address, which is quarterback. Derek Carr isn't the best, and I think they could have used a quarterback. At least give him a try.
Yeah.
Talking about the edge rush, Ethan. Last year they spent their number 4 overall pick on Cleveland Farrell. He's really going to take a big step this year, I believe, with coaching and especially with less pressure from him because of this great secondary now.
But they don't have anybody else on the opposite side of him to help
Max Crosby,
relieve the pressure.
He's all right.
There's nobody going to relieve the pressure of double teams like you see on every other great team. 49ers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, all of the top teams. They have 2 good edge rushers to come in. What do the Raiders have? They only have 1.
Farrell and Crosby, that's who they have.
Crosby really showed up in the second half of the year.
I don't think it's going to be enough.
I think that the Raiders should have gone Patrick Queen instead of Damon Arnett. They need to address linebacker. Obviously, Vontaze Burfict didn't work out. They need that leader in the middle of the field, just control the defense.
All right. Kansas City Chiefs, B- again. Really different picks here. Lowest pick, Rishi. What'd you say about this one?
I mean, I'm going to revise my grade a little bit, give it a C instead of a D. I mean, you're the Super Bowl champs, you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think you should have gone Jonathan Taylor here. I feel like he's a more explosive back than Helaire. I just think, it's just an average draft. There's nothing much you could do with this pick.
George, you give him an A. Which is a little bit surprising for me, but why don't you explain that?
Although Helaire isn't the greatest pick at this position, this is the player they need because they're doing a running back by committee, and all the good teams right now they have running back by committee. And this guy, he's not going to be a standout back, but he's going to be what the Chiefs need to fit the mold. Also, their next 2 picks, Willie Gay, linebacker, one of the steals, I think. He could have went early second round if he could have went in Jordan Brooks' place. I feel like. And TCU lineman Lucas Niang, I think he's going to be the steal of the draft. This man is a absolute dominant force who could have won in the back half of the first round.
All right, I'm going to have to make a slight correction to what I said earlier. I said Rishi was the nicest pick, the nicest grader. I'm going to have to go with George on that one. Really,
this is not an A,
really
George.
kind.
This is not an A.
This is not an
It's
A.
what they needed. These first 3, they really hit on these first 2 rounds.
Jonathan Taylor would have been a better pick.
George, you're throwing out.
I know, but Edwards-Helaire is
charge
who
your
they
computer.
needed. They want a running back by committee. They don't want a singular standout back.
They already have
That's what
Damian.
made them successful
They
in
have
the Super
Damian
Bowl.
Williams too. They're gonna have multiple running
Niners
backs.
didn't know what they were hit with from these backs, especially with Mahomes throwing the ball. This guy's a pass-catching beast who's going to fit their mold of what Andy Reid is trying to do.
I disagree, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I think they should have gone just with Jonathan Taylor, that one standout running back, and relieve the pressure off Mahomes.
Yeah.
Not
Like,
to
you can't
mention,
have
these guys
Mahomes
are a
throwing
Super Bowl
like
team.
40,
The only question
45
mark
passes
last
every
year
game.
cornerback, and they dressed their secondary in Snead and Keys, which I think are pretty good picks and what they really needed.
All right.
That's all the teams in the AFC.
Oh, you're just doing the AFC?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I guess that ends it there then, right?
Yep.
All right. This has been episode 2 of the ELPS podcast, the number podcast show. I'm Ethan. See you guys next time.